You ever notice how a woman can drift away long before her footsteps ever leave the room? How her silence grows heavier, thicker, almost suffocating, while you're still trying to figure out what went wrong? It's unsettling, isn't it? That moment when her warmth begins to cool, when her eyes stop searching for yours, when her laughter no longer blooms from anything you say. It's like watching the light in a house fade one room at a time until you're standing alone in the dark, confused, helpless, and wondering how you missed the signs. But here's the truth no one tells you. Women rarely walk away suddenly. They leave emotionally long before they leave physically. And most men never notice the slow collapse, the quiet unraveling, the hidden mistakes that push her further from your arms. This is where the psychology gets dark. Welcome to Female Code Unlocked, the place where we don't sugarcoat, we decode. Where we walk deep into the labyrinth of feminine instinct and emotional logic, and we do it with clarity, honesty, and raw psychological truth. If you're ready to understand women on a level most men never reach, make sure you subscribe. Because once you learn this knowledge, you'll never see relationships the same way again. Now come closer, because what I'm about to tell you is not gentle. It's not easy, but it will save you from losing a woman you didn't know you were pushing away. There's a moment in every relationship where a man unknowingly creates distance. Not because he wants to, but because he doesn't understand the emotional threads a woman uses to feel safe, desired, and connected. You might think everything is fine. You might think, she's just being distant today. But to her, she feels something cracking, something she hopes you'll notice, but fears you won't. It starts small. Maybe you dismiss her feelings with a joke, thinking humor softens the blow. But to her, it feels like a quiet betrayal, a subtle message that her inner world doesn't matter. Or maybe you try too hard, over-texting, over-explaining, over-chasing, hoping your effort will prove your love, not realizing you're suffocating the very attraction she wants to feel freely. There are mistakes men make not out of malice, but out of fear, out of insecurity, out of not understanding the delicate psychological dance that attraction depends on. And the darkest part? Women won't always tell you what you did wrong. They won't hand you a map. They won't warn you with flashing signs. They'll simply pull back, emotionally, energetically, spiritually, until one day you wake up and realize she's no longer yours, even though she's still lying beside you. You can feel it right now, can't you? That tug in your chest? That fear of losing someone you haven't even lost yet? That subtle realization that maybe, just maybe, she's been drifting and you didn't see it until now, but you're here. And that matters more than you think, because every mistake has a pattern, and every pattern has a psychology behind it. And once you understand why these mistakes push her away, why they trigger her emotional survival instincts, why they make her shut down, why they make her lose trust, you gain something rare, the power to stop the distance before it starts. Imagine knowing the exact moment she begins to disconnect. Imagine understanding the invisible conversations happening inside her mind. Imagine being able to pull her closer, not through force, not through pleading, but through emotional intelligence so strong, she feels safe returning to you again and again. Tonight, we go into the shadows of those mistakes, where desire fades, where connection cracks, where attraction dies silently, and you're about to see the first one in a way you've never seen it before. There's a moment a woman will never tell you about. A moment she feels the shift in your energy before you feel it in yourself. It's quiet, almost invisible. You might be sitting beside her, telling her about your day, laughing, touching her hand. Yet something inside her is whispering, "He's slipping." And that whisper grows louder every time you make one of the mistakes you don't even realize you're making. The first mistake begins with your silence, not the strong, grounded kind, but the heavy, uncertain quiet that leaks insecurity. You think being reserved makes you mysterious, but she feels the tension behind your eyes. She feels the doubt hiding in the way you hesitate before speaking. A woman can sense fear in a man the same way animals sense a storm before it hits, not because she wants to judge you, but because her emotional safety depends on your psychological stability. You ever notice how she becomes softer when you're certain, but colder when you're unsure? It's because women read the space between your words more than the words themselves. That small flicker of insecurity, when you second-guess yourself, when you look at her for reassurance instead of offering it, makes her feel like she's carrying both of your emotions at once. And no woman stays attracted when she feels she's becoming the emotional backbone of the relationship. But the second mistake is darker, and it's one men make with the purest intentions. You give too much, too fast, too intensely. You shower her with attention, affection, validation, and at first she melts into it. But eventually it overwhelms her. Not because she doesn't appreciate affection, but because you give it from a place of fear rather than desire. Women can sense when a man's love is rooted in anxiety, when his affection is a plea, not an expression. And once she feels that, her attraction doesn't fade. It evaporates. You think you're proving your love. She thinks you're proving your dependence. Imagine her heart like a flame. It needs oxygen, space, air. When you smother it with constant attention, constant messaging, constant emotional pouring, the fire doesn't grow. It dies. And then there's the third mistake. The one that cuts deeper than men ever realize. You stop being the man she was first drawn to. The confident version of you. The playful version. The man with passion, direction, self-respect. Without noticing it, you shift from being her desire to being her comfort. And comfort slowly becomes predictable. Predictable becomes boring. Boring becomes invisible. Women don't fall for men who revolve around them. They fall for men with gravity, men who pull them in without chasing, men who stand rooted in their purpose so firmly that she feels lucky to be part of their orbit. But when you abandon your own world and make her your entire sky, she stops seeing you as the man she once admired. She starts seeing you as the man who lost himself trying to keep her. And nothing pushes a woman away faster than watching a man shrink. There's a moment, usually late at night, when she looks at you differently. You won't catch it unless you know what to look for. Her eyes soften, but not with love, with sadness. The sadness of watching a man drown in his own emotions while trying to pretend he's still above the surface. She loves you, but she can't desire a man who needs her more than he needs himself. And this is the darkest part of all. She won't tell you which mistake you're making. She won't warn you. She won't sit you down and say, "Here is what's killing my attraction." She'll just grow colder. Shorter replies, less initiation, less effort. She'll pull away with a quiet grace most men mistake as moodiness, and by the time you realize it, she's already halfway gone. Yet here's the part you must remember. Women don't want to leave. They want to feel safe staying. But safety doesn't come from your words, or your promises, or your apologies. It comes from your emotional strength, your presence, your certainty, your ability to hold your own center even when she's losing hers. There's a point in every connection where a woman watches you more closely, not to judge you, but to understand the nature of the man she's letting into her emotional world. Women don't fall, they observe, quietly, subtly, almost invisibly. And one of the biggest mistakes men make is acting as if her attraction is permanent, when in reality, it's constantly responding to the energy you bring. You think she pulls away because she loses interest, but often, she pulls away because she no longer recognizes the man she was drawn to. And this brings us to one of the most emotionally painful mistakes men make. You mirror her moods instead of leading your own. When she becomes cold, you become colder. When she becomes distant, you chase. When she becomes quiet, you panic. When she becomes emotional, you defend. When she becomes insecure, you reassure in a way that sounds more like begging than comforting. Do you notice the pattern? Your reactions are controlling the dynamic instead of your character. A woman feels safest with a man whose emotional state isn't determined by hers. Not because she wants you to be distant, but because she wants to trust your stability. She wants to feel that when her world shakes, your world doesn't crumble with it. If she's upset and you become upset, she loses trust. If she's distant and you become clingy, she loses attraction. If she pulls back and you chase, she feels smothered. If she gets emotional and you collapse under the weight of her intensity, she sees you as fragile. It's not malicious. It's instinctive. And it's one of the deepest triggers of feminine withdrawal. Because when a woman feels she has to manage a man's emotions, her heart shuts down. It becomes survival, not connection. You ever notice how a woman will test you in small ways? A delayed reply, a slightly colder tone, a shift in her energy. Not because she's trying to play games, but because she's trying to understand your center. And the moment she realizes your emotions depend on hers is the moment she begins to pull away. But the next mistake is even more subtle, almost invisible to the male mind. You stop paying attention to the details, not the big things. Men usually handle those, but the micro moments that define feminine desire. The way her voice drops when she's tired, the way her eyes change when something bothers her, the tone she uses when she wants closeness but doesn't want to ask for it, the slight pause she gives when she needs reassurance but doesn't want to seem needy. Women speak a language made of small signals, and men lose attraction not because they don't care, but because they don't notice. You think she's distant because she's moody, but she's distant because she feels unseen. There's a kind of loneliness only women understand. The loneliness of loving a man who never truly looks into her, who never hears the emotion behind her words, who never catches the sadness sitting quietly behind her smile. A woman can tolerate many things, but she cannot tolerate emotional invisibility. And here's where the psychology cuts the deepest. When a woman feels unseen, she doesn't complain, she disconnects. Softly at first, almost kindly, almost hoping you'll notice. But if you don't, she builds a private world without you, one where she doesn't have to explain herself, one where she doesn't have to beg for emotional intimacy, one where she can breathe again. And by the time you wake up to the silence between you, she's already grieving the connection you're still trying to save. But this isn't where the story ends. This is the point where men either evolve or lose her for good. There's a moment in every man's life where he feels a woman slipping, and no matter what he does, no matter how kind, how attentive, how good he tries to be, she keeps drifting like a shadow pulled by a tide he can't see. And you sit there wondering, why isn't this working? Why is she still moving away? But what you don't realize is this. Sometimes the things you think will keep her are the very things that chase her away. One of the most painful mistakes men make is trying to fix her emotions instead of feeling them with her. You think solutions show strength. To her, they show distance. When she tells you she's hurt, you offer answers. When she tells you she's anxious, you offer logic. When she tells you something bothered her, you try to explain her feelings away. But women don't fall for men who understand their problems. They fall for men who understand them. There's a difference. It's not your mind she wants. It's your presence, your warmth, your ability to sit in the storm with her without trying to force the sky to clear. Women aren't emotional to be rescued. They're emotional to be felt. And when she realizes you don't feel with her, she starts to feel alone, no matter how close you're sitting. But the next mistake? It's darker, more psychological, more rooted in the parts of a man he doesn't want to look at. You reveal your wounds too quickly. Maybe you think vulnerability will pull her closer, prove you trust her, make her see your heart. But when vulnerability is unloaded without emotional structure, it stops being intimacy and starts becoming weight. You tell her your fears too early, your traumas too deeply, your insecurities too openly, your dependence too visibly. You think you're creating closeness, but she begins to feel responsible for your stability. And once she feels responsible, desire quietly dies. A woman can handle your vulnerability, but she cannot desire your fragility. She needs to see your heart, not your collapse. And then comes the mistake that destroys more attraction than cheating, arguments, or jealousy ever could. You forget the mission of your own life. Slowly, quietly, without noticing, you stop being the man who had purpose. Your goals fade, your direction blurs, your ambition softens, you stop improving, stop expanding, stop chasing the horizon. You turn her into the destination instead of inviting her along the journey. But a woman can't love a man who abandons his own path. Because when your purpose dies, something inside her dies with it. She fell for the man who had a fire, not the man who let her become the only light in his world. But the deepest mistake, the one that sends her running emotionally long before you see it, is when you start negotiating for affection. You offer more effort when she offers less. You try harder when she pulls away. You give love as a trade, not as an expression. You try to earn her warmth instead of embodying your own. You start living in a psychological contract neither of you agreed to. And she can feel the desperation behind every word, every gesture, every attempt to make things better. And nothing kills attraction faster than a man who treats love like a bargain. Women don't want to be convinced. They want to be inspired, drawn in, pulled by energy, not pushed by effort. Because feminine attraction doesn't grow through pressure. It grows through presence. You may not realize it, but right now you're standing at a crossroads, between repeating the patterns that lose her and stepping into the version of yourself she never wants to walk away from. If you listen closely, there's a particular silence a woman gives you before she leaves. Not the cold silence of anger, not the distant silence of boredom, but the soft, hollow silence of emotional exhaustion. It's the silence of a woman who stayed longer than her heart could endure. And most men don't notice it until they're standing in the ruins of what they once took for granted. Because the most dangerous mistakes The ones that truly chase a woman away aren't the loud ones. They're the quiet ones, the subtle patterns, the unconscious behaviors that slowly drain the oxygen from her desire. And one of the most destructive is this. You start loving her with fear instead of confidence. Fear of losing her, fear of disappointing her, fear of not being enough, fear of another man taking your place. And fear changes a man. It tightens his voice, it softens his boundaries, it bends his principles, it turns his love into a performance instead of a presence. She didn't fall for the man who fears. She fell for the man who leads. But fear makes you grasp. Fear makes you overthink. Fear makes you hold her so tightly she can no longer breathe in your arms. You think you're holding on. She feels like she's being held hostage by your insecurities, but the next mistake goes even deeper, almost primitive in its psychological impact. You make her your emotional healer. You vent to her more than you inspire her. You depend on her more than you stand for yourself. You turn her softness into a crutch until she can no longer carry the weight. Women aren't afraid of a man's pain. They're afraid of being the only place he puts it, because once she becomes your emotional mother instead of your emotional partner, she stops seeing you as a man, not by choice, by instinct. No woman wants to make love to the child she had to raise emotionally. But the mistake that cuts the deepest, the mistake that leaves scars, is when a man stops making a woman feel chosen. You get comfortable. You assume her presence means permanence. You forget the small gestures, the emotional touches, the intimate acknowledgments that once made her feel like she was the only woman in the room, even when others were standing beside her. She doesn't need grand gestures. She needs to feel valued, seen, desired. But when you stop choosing her, not with your words, but with your actions, she starts closing the doors of her heart one by one, not because she stopped loving you, but because she stopped feeling loved by you. And here's where the psychology turns darkest. When a woman feels both unseen and emotionally overburdened, her mind begins rewriting the story of the relationship. She starts remembering the pain more than the joy, the disappointments more than the connection, the heaviness more than the tenderness. And the moment a woman emotionally rewrites the story, it becomes nearly impossible to bring her back, because she's not leaving you. She's leaving the version of herself she became with you, the tired version, the anxious version, the one who carried too much and received too little. A woman doesn't walk away because she wants another man. She walks away because she misses the woman she was before she met you. But here's the part most men never understand. When she leaves, she doesn't hate you. She hates that you didn't fight for yourself. She hates that you handed her your power. She hates that you stopped being the man she believed you could be. She hates that she had to choose herself because you refused to choose your own growth. And deep down, in the parts she'll never admit out loud, she hates that losing you hurts less than staying with you. But this story isn't over. Not yet. There comes a moment, quiet, dim, almost unreal, where a woman looks at you with eyes that once held fire, and now hold only memory. That moment doesn't happen suddenly. It happens slowly, painfully, invisibly, and the mistake that causes it is the one men almost never see. It's when you stop making her feel emotionally safe. Not safe from danger, safe from you, safe from your reactions, safe from your unpredictability, safe from the emotional storms you never learned to calm inside yourself. Because safety in feminine psychology isn't about protection from the world. It's about protection from the man she lets into her heart. When she tells you something vulnerable and you dismiss it, she stops opening up. When she tells you what hurt her and you get defensive, she starts hiding her pain. When she tries to share her truth and you make it about yourself, she starts shrinking inside the relationship. And once a woman stops feeling safe, she starts becoming silent. Not the peaceful kind of silence, the suffocating kind. The kind that holds everything she never said because she knew you wouldn't hear it correctly. You think she's quiet because she's fine, but she's quiet because she's finished trying. And here's the psychological twist that hits the hardest. Women don't leave when they stop loving you. They leave when they stop trusting you with their love. She may still care. She may still want you. She may still feel something when she hears your name. But if she can't trust that her heart is safe with you, she'll take it back, piece by piece, until you're holding nothing but echoes. And while you're trying to figure out what went wrong, she's grieving the relationship you didn't notice was dying. But the most devastating mistake, the one that doesn't just push her away, but psychologically breaks her, is this. You only valued her when you feared losing her. It happens in cycles. You grow distant. She grows hurt. She pulls away. You panic. Suddenly you're attentive, loving, present. And for a moment, she wonders if the old you is back. But once she returns her warmth, you return to your patterns. To her, it feels like emotional whiplash, like loving a man whose affection is a negotiation, like living in a world where she only matters when she's slipping out of your hands. Do you know what that does to a woman's heart? It trains her to stop trusting your tenderness, to stop believing your words, to stop feeling safe in your arms. It teaches her that the only way to feel valued is to be half out the door. And here's the heartbreaking truth. A woman will always choose peace over passion if passion feels like pain. You don't lose her because she found someone else. You lose her because she found herself again and realized she deserved better energy than the one she had to beg from you. She leaves quietly, she leaves kindly, she leaves respectfully, but she leaves completely. And that's when you finally wake up. Not to her absence, but to the version of yourself you should have been all along. Every woman, deep down, wants the same thing. A man she can trust with her softness. A man who adds to her peace instead of draining it. A man who grows, who leads, who listens. A man who stands firmly enough in himself that she can finally collapse into him without fear. And maybe you weren't that man before, but you can become him now. Not for her. For you. Because the psychology of desire always begins with the psychology of self. If you want her to stay, become the kind of man she never wants to walk away from. If you want to heal the pattern, heal the parts of yourself that created it. And if you want love that lasts, learn to love in a way that doesn't break the person receiving it. This is where the story ends for now. But it's also where your transformation begins.